Many of us have a personal desire to understand the self. And a lot of people turn to things like religion in order to do that, in order to have a safe construct with which to understand life and the self and our place in life. Now, I personally have a little bit of a quest to render religion useless in that individual quest. And I want to ask you a question because a lot of religion is based on this idea that we, in and of ourselves, are not enough. And it's often quite strongly founded on the basis of a rejection of the self, a dislike of the self. Ideas like sin and shame and guilt and repentance all point to the self being hugely, grossly imperfect. And that places an immediate limit on the self. And so let's flip the coin. Let's flip the idea and just imagine that we actually live in a society that celebrates the self. Imagine we lived in a society where it would be completely normal to have a beautiful, vibrant photograph of yourself as your iPhone wallpaper on your wall at home, because the self is your greatest project. And the self is the vehicle by which you perform everything on the planet. And yet it's the thing that we are discouraged from celebrating and from identifying too much with. And does a world in which the self is celebrated and comfortably enjoyed as such, does that foster a world that encourages our limitations or our limitlessness? And then conversely, a world where we're needing to lean on something like religion or something external from ourselves, does that conjure up a sense of the self being limited or limitless? Now, the story of a higher being aside, just pure and simple, the self, the reverence and the respect and the dignity around self-image. Do we live in a society right now that allows you to see yourself from the lens of your limitlessness or your limitations? And that is the entry point for me personally. That is the place I want to start having deeper conversations. If the self is comfortably celebrated and experienced as a unique, magical, magnificent, interesting, wonderful being worth celebrating, worth honoring, and if there is no shame or disrespect or negativity around an appreciation of the self, what kind of world and what kind of experience can you have? Does your communication change? Do the choices you make change? And how you live your life and how you interact and the projects that you select to spend your time and energy on. When you view yourself as a precious, proud, magical, interesting, worthy being, how can you, why do you perform in the world? And so, if the self is elevated and given a place of dignified prominence in the society via you, via me, are we then operating from a better place, a more limitless place, or are we limited? Now, I personally feel that a lot of the stories and law that we have around being human are outdated and need a huge refresh. And one of the stories that I personally am being called forth to be a part of changing is the human's experience of itself as not a sinner, not shameful, not guilty of anything, but as a dignified experience and one to be celebrated. And that to me is a story of limitlessness as the human being. And for me, that renders the majority of religious doctrine as nothing more than story, which encapsulates the human in a loop of needing something external to validate itself. And that is by definition a limitation on the human experience.